You're watching It's Life Live with your hosts, Juan Lee and Oliver Marcel. Come join us for enriching, enlightening, encouraging, and thought-provoking conversation. Let's go.
Hey, Oliver, what's up?
What's happening? We're here. We're back. We're back for another It's Life Live.
Hey,
Great conversation is in store. I already know.
That's ideally, it's all about enriching everybody who's a part of it, who's involved. So tonight it's going to be no different, hopefully. And we got some interesting conversation. Just to get started, get some housekeeping done. This is our live edition of our podcast that we have. Is called It's Life, and it's out on Clear Journeys webs or YouTube channel, along with Juan Lee, the author, who's yours truly, Juan Lee, the author, and Oliver Marcel. There we go. That's the introduction to each other. So we're going to have an interesting conversation tonight.
Indeed.
And this is for anyone who is there listening. We would appreciate it if you would participate. If you're there, say this is your first time or your second time, however many times you've been here. If we'd appreciate it if you let us know that you're here so that we can bring you in the conversation, because this is really a conversation about all of us as it relates to the topic that we are going to be talking about tonight. Just a little bit of information about Clear Journey. Clear Journey is a nonprofit organization that supports individuals and families in education and resources in 8 areas of life, and for the purpose that you might be able to live your most fulfilled life. And so that's what we do. If you have any questions, learn more things about it, go over to clearjourney.org and learn more about us. I'm also an author of Love Made Simple, the Guide to Inner Peace, Contentment, and Success. You can pick up a copy of that at Clear Journey also, or on Amazon or other places like that. But that's what we're about here, and it's about resources to everybody and anybody who are searching and seeking information about life. That's what this is all about, Oliver, right? It's about life.
It's about life. Listen, it is about life. Make sure you go grab your copy of Love Made Simple as well. Listen, it's all of us are experiencing life. If you are breathing, if you are seeing this, if you are hearing this, if you're not hearing it, but you're seeing our lips move, you are a participant in this thing called life. And as such, we run across some of the same things. We run across some different things. And I think that it's important that we have conversations about it. And I think that's what, the goal of this is not, we were talking, earlier, and I was saying the goal of this is not necessarily to tell you what to think. The goal is to get you to think and to think about your participation in this thing called life. And what is your contribution? What is your passion? What is your purpose? What is the legacy that you leave behind? And so these are the conversations that I feel like are important to the age that we're in, and they will help to guide us, help to foster some level of expansion of perspective in our thought process as we travel through this thing called life. So that's what it's all about.
And that's exactly what it's all about. And tonight we're going to use one of those 7 or 8 areas of life as the umbrella to put this topic that we're going to be talking under. And the umbrella for this particular conversation is humanity. Humanity is that part of life that we all have in common. And I think it's so very appropriate for tonight's conversation, because what we're going to be talking about is something that has been maneuvering in our country and around everything that's happening right now in light of the indictments of our former president, Donald Trump. And it's been, though we're pitted against one another as it pertains to something that we all have in common. And it's making the country more divided than it is unifying us. And so tonight, we just wanted to talk about why is it or should politics and justice be a either or? That's what it seems like everything is boiled down to now. It's justice, fair, equal justice. And again, that's another conversation as it relates to fair justice or equal justice versus just justice. But the umbrella here is it's justice versus politics. They stand alone by themselves for all of us to participate and to be held accountable accordingly. You know, justice is about order. Okay. Politics is about governing. They both need to be in place for us to be able to have what we've deemed as the United States of America and this capital and this democracy or this republic that we have all are part of. So that's the conversation. And that's the way we want to structure it, so that the conversation is that we're all in this thing together. And what's the approach? How do we navigate this part of this experience called life when we have people or organizations trying to pit us against one another? Because that's what we're up against, being pitted against one another. What's your thought?
That brings the question whether politics and justice should even be in the same conversation. If they're both needed as standalone entities, but it seems like maybe those two are, to use your word, you said they're being pitted against each other. It's interesting, man, because if you ask some people their view of politics and justice, if we are going to put them in the same conversation, you may get the response that some feel like people use politics to manipulate or circumvent justice, or that justice doesn't apply in certain areas where politics needs to be stood up a certain way, which now brings a whole nother question into whether justice is really justice, or if justice is a byproduct of politics.
Yeah.
Created for politics to do what it needs to do.
Yeah. Well, see, and this is why here's the thing. If we can sort of keep it in a very generic form,
okay,
in a sense of just the pureness of justice versus governing,
okay.
Law, it's order versus governance. And instead of saying, because what we're being pitted against is though we throw order out the window for the sake of governance, or vice versa, we throw governance out the window for order. And it's not an either or, and it's a both and. And until we get to the point where we can see both sides and understand that they're both just as important or significant in the very basic fundamentals of it. Now, we all know that everything that's justice ain't fair. Everything that's political, there's a lot to be said about our politicians and our politics in general. But the fact is that they have purpose and they're needed. And we've got to be able to remain true to what that need is in the midst of these types of challenges that we're under, or we're teetering on tyranny in so many ways, because we're losing order at the expense of governance, or we're losing governance at the expense of order. And we can't lose either one of them. We need to be able to do them better, more efficiently, and more inclusively, but not at the expense of one or the other.
How do you do that when, well, I guess, I don't know, maybe you can't. My question was going to be, how do you do that from our vantage point? Now, the argument can be made, hey, you have some level of power over governance by who you put in office, meaning you should be voting at the local level, and creating that trickle up effect, if you will. Is that the only way?
Well, that's the way in which it's structured, and that's why I'm saying this conversation creates the desire that we all need to be participants. Remember, that participants in this thing called life, and as it relates to politics, we have to participate to be able to understand the political process, so that we know that its value in times like this. See, because like right now we're in a time that if you're not engaged in politics, only part that you see is the justice part. You saying all we see is the justice part. And if you're not into justice, if you don't value justice, all you see is the politics side. All you see is politics. All you see is politics. And politics in and of itself has a lot to be desired. I mean, let's be honest. If you were to probably, it's very difficult for you not to look at politics and see what you were talking about as it relates to how you use politics to navigate justice. And that's a corruption, and let's call it like it is. That's the corruption of it. But at the same time, understanding its need while still having to navigate that process of being corrupt, that potential of being corrupt. That's not an easy task. But yeah, we've got to engage it irrespective of whether or not the potential for it to be corrupt is there. We can't do it because that's the human element.
I think that's the challenge too, because there are people who will say, politics is not my thing. I don't involve myself in politics. It doesn't really matter. Your level of involvement can only be but so much for some people, and they don't feel like that even makes a difference. And so I'm just going to fall back completely. And I think that's the challenge, because sometimes you feel like, hey, no matter what we do, whatever little involvement we may have, whether it be in choosing our local representatives or voting in general elections, whatever the case may be, is that what we do is not going to stop the corruption, because there are people who associate corruption with governance and vice versa. So I think that's the challenge, because that now trickles into a disbelief or a sense of mistrust, if you will, in justice. Because if justice is going to be manipulated by the folk we already think is corrupt, or if justice is going to be created, let's use that word, by the folk who are already corrupt, then we're fighting a losing battle. So rather than me get into the ring knowing I'm gonna get knocked out, I'm gonna just fall back and never get in.
Yeah, well, that's really the thing that we've got to fight against. See, the fact that we have that right to not to get into the fight is the same reason why you need to get in the fight.
Unpack that.
Well, see, this is the point I'm saying, because the only way, in spite of the corruption, you've got to be willing to fight against the potential of the corruption. And if you don't, you just make corruption that much easier. See, because if you're not engaging, you're not holding anybody accountable. Okay. You're not holding anybody accountable if you're not engaging. It's sort of like, don't tell me what you want to do if you're on the sideline. What I should do if you're on the sideline. You got to get in the game if you want to be able to be a participant. You got to get in the game, and that's a part of the game of life in America, is the political process. That's the only governance that we have. Now, whether it's corrupt, that means that's that human element that's in it, but the intent, we have to be able to look for the intent. And the point of matters is that each of us bring that the value to that process. If it can only be corrupt if the people that are participating in it is corrupt. Mm-hmm. So if you don't get in it, you leave the door open to more people to be corrupt, unless, it was very interesting. You ever see the Eddie Murphy movie? What was it? Gentlemen's, what was it called? He was talking about politics, mm-hmm. and he became a senator, and he was talking about, he's a con man, Billy. He's a con man.
Distinguished gentleman.
Mm-hmm. He was a con man. And mm-hmm. and that was the emphasis about understanding how politicians mm-hmm. maneuver the system to their benefit.
Right.
And I mean, here's the point. Understand the game. Politics is nothing more different than life. Okay? In life, it's about playing the game. If you don't understand the game, you're going to miss the game. If the game of politics, if it's a game called politics, understand the game and then make it about being right, or in the sense of being the benefit of serving all versus your own agenda, then you can begin to input or influence and impact the greater good.
Listen, I like what you're saying. I'm just going to play devil's advocate. I like what you're saying. The question is, how do we convince people in a very long standing era, if you will, of corruption? How do we convince people that there is some level of advantage for them to get in the game, so to speak? How do we go about convincing people of that? And in light of everything that's going on, right? Because what's going on right now that even mm-hmm. prompts this conversation of politics versus justice, if you get in some circles and some dinner conversations and some people around the table, around the water cooler, many people are already convinced that justice will have no bearing on this situation, so, and I think that is just a reflection of the thought process for ages.
Well, here's the point. Justice is subjective, unfortunately. Unfortunately, it's subjective because it's talked about, you're judged by your peers. And mm-hmm. now when we say subjective, now we're talking about perspective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's what's the perspective of those peers that will be judging you as it relates to justice.
Okay.
And everybody has their own. And that's why when we started this, I wanted to gather an area of life that we all have in common called humanity. Mm-hmm. Because it's through humanity that we can come through those eyes of humanity and say, okay, we have this in common. The benefit of governance is for all of us to be able to live in a harmonious environment with, and here's the point, with some sort of civility which we can call, order.
Okay.
And that's why justice is so important, because you just can't be just running around doing anything. So somebody has to be. And if you think about our country, we have three parts governing.
Mm-hmm.
We have the judiciary, we have the legislature, and you have the executive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No one of those three makes this thing run by itself. Right. They need to sign off. All of them need to sign off. Okay. So in the sense of what we're dealing with is that there's some type of check and balance.
Mm-hmm.
That's the unique thing about this country is that there's supposed to be check and balance. We, the people, are the ones that make that check and balance work.
Okay. If
we decide to not get in the game, guess then what happens? Let's go back to 2020 and
mm-hmm.
ask that question. What happens when we don't engage and participate? We're in the midst of it right now. No, actually, 2016, my fault, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Because we didn't want to engage because we didn't like anybody that we wanted to vote for. And so what happens? That election is going to go down in American history as probably one of the worst elections in American history.
Mm-hmm.
And guess, now here's the point. And it's only because the people didn't want to participate.
Yeah, I heard somebody say, and I can't remember where I heard this. I heard this recently, that people did not vote again. People did not. How did they word it? People did not vote for Trump. They voted against Hillary.
Absolutely. And guess
I
what?
thought that was an interesting way to put that.
And guess what? And how you did that was by not voting.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that is not an option.
It's not an option.
That is not an option.
Yeah, it's not an option. I think, I don't know, not to be the dead horse, but I think that, I don't know, for me, the hurdle that I don't see how to get over is convincing people that their participation in that process makes a difference. We say that, and we, we shout that from the mountaintops, and we give examples of, just like you said, the election is an example of that, right? Why your participation is important. But then for some reason, that argument is still not enough to motivate people to change the way they view this process in a way that would result in their participation.
Well, I'm going to tell you what is the thing that motivates. See, and it's interesting. You just shared it. And if we continue to allow this particular type of mindset
mm-hmm.
or attitude drive us, and I'm just going to say what it is. It's a selfish attitude.
Okay.
It's a selfish attitude, because until we value the bigger picture,
mm-hmm.
we are going to continually be subject to the corruption that we're going to have to suffer through, because we're unwilling to invest in the future of mankind, of humanity, in America, in our children, for our children.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the point. It's not about right now. It's about the trajectory of how our country progresses. It's not about today. It's not about today. Ain't no time and space in this country. Everything has been perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? It never will be. But how we plot the course will denote what the trajectory is going to be for the country. And that takes selflessness. That doesn't take right now. It's like you're not going to get everything you want in any generation, in any dispensation. You're not. But it's not until we get off of this thing, or I want everything I want right now, and understand the value is something greater than myself. It's greater than this issue, this situation. Here's the point. In politics, particularly in our country, a president, as we just talked about, can't do everything for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. He has an agenda, but it can get wiped down by Congress. It'll never be realized by Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Never realized. So he's got to then get to persuade people to get involved. Here's my point. The president is going to have an agenda for 4 years or 8 years. After that, somebody else is going to have another agenda.
Mm-hmm.
We are living through different agendas every 4 years. And we have to be able to navigate that. It's not like it's going to stay in our favor all the way through our life experience. We've got to understand that we have to navigate change. And instead of trying to manipulate change, how about navigating it? How about learning to navigate it instead of trying to manipulate it? Because guess what? All of the manipulation is only temporary.
That's interesting, because I hear what could be a positive result of what you're saying. I hear what could be a not so positive result of what you're saying. So I'll start with the positive. what I what I'm hearing is that we probably need to change our perspective, or we need to change our focus, maybe a little bit of both. The focus now often being on the individuals at the quote unquote top of the food chain being the bulk of the problem. And as a result of them being the bulk of the problem, what trickles down to us cannot be, we can't do anything about it.
No.
So what I'm hearing though from you this is what I'm hearing. If we're talking about under the umbrella of humanity, that if the focus now is on humanity, which is, if we're going to talk about them being the top level, this would be the ground level, focusing on humanity and what we want to see out of humanity, what we want to contribute to achieving what we want to see. If that's the focus, everything that aligns with that in terms of our actions, the people that we put in office, the level of participation we have to put those people in office actually will be a byproduct of that, as opposed to our frustration being a byproduct of looking at the top.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's the thing. Understand that the top is only temporary. And the bottom is where everything consistently maintains and builds the support. They work for us. If we unify, we dictate who's up at the top. But we've got to get engaged.
That's true.
We've got to engage.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Listen, I'm with you. I gotta say, I'm with you.
Look,
and there's no but. The other side of that coin, though, is, man, it's an uphill battle, because there's some people who are like, yeah, we are the ground floor, and so we don't necessarily need to worry about who's at the top, because maybe what we need to do now is unify on the ground floor. and we don't even need them. That's a whole nother conversation, which involves now some level of anarchy, to use a triggering word. But it just, I don't know, getting that mindset that talks, getting that mindset that speaks to, okay, I am part of a bigger thing called humanity. And as such, I have a vision for the part I play and for the legacy I want to leave. And as such, in order for me to do my part, I'm going to have to participate in every area that is in alignment with potentially seeing what it is I want to see in humanity. That's a very different mentality that I don't know that we're do, I don't know that we're doing a great job of displaying in terms of the way an example, which is why I like what Clear Journey is doing. That's your mission in a nutshell,
Mm-hmm.
is to bring that forth. But we need some folk, and shameless plug, to come alongside you
Hey,
and ripple that out, because I don't know that that's a common, yea, welcomed philosophy.
well, I understand. I mean, here's the thing. It's not us against them. That's the point that I think we need to understand. It's not us against them. We understand that we take control over the area in which we are participants in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We get control. That what we bring to the table is where we then have control to affect the impact. And that's why I'm saying, if you engage at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
the top is affected by the bottom.
Okay.
There is no pyramid that stands on its own. Its baseline is what holds it up. The base flow holds it up. So then we've got to understand our role is more important than the dog on top, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
If the top only looks the way it looks, is because the bottom is the problem.
Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Hey, but let's think about it. You don't have to be an engineer. We had this conversation once before about building a house. We don't
Mm-hmm.
start at the roof.
You don't start at the roof. You're right.
When you start blaming stuff because
You're
it
right.
fell down, we would don't. Oh, that roof was something else. That roof was terrible. No, the foundation is where that thing started. And if it's cracking when you start putting walls up, it's gonna have a hard time standing when the wind start blowing.
Yeah, and here's a caveat, maybe not a caveat, but here's something, an additional leg to this, is that it's one thing to change the perspective of those who are not participating. There's also a perspective change that may need, now here's where it's going to get controversial, a perspective change for individuals who do participate but participate blindly. And here's what I mean by that. You have some folk who will only vote a certain way, and they're going to vote that way regardless of whether the devil is the candidate or God is the candidate. They're either devoted to red or they are devoted to blue. It don't matter who's in there. A robot could be in one of them, but they're like, I'm going for this because this is what I stand for, and this is what. That don't help either.
Well, here is. I'm not going to say that doesn't help. Okay. Because whether or not you do something like that or not, you keep those that are running honest. You keep them honest.
Okay.
Okay. Now, whether or not that has become a manipulation. Okay. That has become a way that politicians use groups to manipulate them.
Here's the thing, though, it's working. Unfortunately,
here's the point. It is, but at the same time, they have determined how to navigate that And it's a psychological warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Psychological warfare. And the more you engage, the less they are able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The more you know, the less they're able to do that. Because typically what you're talking about is like, I'm going to just follow the lead. Okay, I'm going to engage, but I'm just going to engage. I'm going to be a blind leading the blind.
Mm-hmm.
That's not quite the engagement that's necessary. But again, it's better than nothing, but it's still not the engagement to keep the politicians honest.
I agree with that. I think the social construct, and I'm using that, people may fight me on that. I'm going to use it anyway. I think the social construct around politics, and I do believe there's a social construct, but it's shaped by what we've seen in the past, right? So typically, let's talk about the African American community. Typically, the African American community is going to vote Democrat because the Democrats, historically, have some things that maybe we kind of lean more towards in the way of not being ultra conservative, right? Here's a crazy stat. I'm gonna give you a crazy stat. This is from late last year. 6% of eligible African American voters stated that they would not. Let me see. Let me get it right. I'm gonna say it so I can get it right. I think it's 6%. This is from Pew Research.
Mm-hmm.
Of African American voters said that they would back a Republican candidate. 6%. 70% of Black registered voters said they would vote for or were leaning to the Democratic House candidate. 24% were unsure, right? I have been in conversations with people who they were like, I'm just voting Democrat. Let me give you even another statistic, a grassroots statistic. I worked the election and I heard people just saying as they were coming in, I'm just voting for all the Democratic candidates. And in my mind, I'm like, do you even know who they are or what they stand for? Like, does it even align with, you know what I'm saying? So, and that's why I'm saying, I think we have two sides of the coin. We got people who just will not participate because they just don't believe that their participation makes a difference. Then you have people on the other end of the spectrum who do participate, but they're still not making choices that would potentially create the difference that they even want. Because they're doing it blindly.
Mm-hmm. We as a society have failed miserably, and it's intentional. Don't get me wrong; it's done intentional, because ignorance is the way that you manipulate people. You manipulate them through ignorance, and what they don't know. You then are able to maneuver them in a way in which is beneficial. And in our country, it's power and money. If you can manipulate people, you'll get power and money. But again, we have to realize that the power is at the base of the pyramid. At the base is where the power is.
Mm-hmm.
And until we recognize that, see, we can sit at the bottom looking up at the top thinking, boy, I wish I was up there. And there's nothing in the world, no success is built from the top down. In the sense of what I mean, you've got to have a foundation to build the doggone empire. To build the skyscraper, you got to have a foundation. And what we've looked at is we've looked at people in positions, knowing that those positions are only relevant to the foundation of the organization. its only foundation is the existence of that position is based on the foundation. You know, here we are, you and I, entrepreneurs. We can call it, look, I am the executive director of one. Okay. That means everything from the top to the bottom I take care of. The fact of the matter is that makes the impact of that decision or that title of being an executive director or the president or the CEO of an organization operating in one is very insignificant until it has a foundation that spreads out, that builds before you can begin to expand. Before you can begin to grow up, you have to grow out. You don't grow up because you can't build something on a narrow foundation. It has to be broad enough and deep enough before you can build on it. And you can't establish any type of depth nor width as an individual. And so you've got to be able to lay that broad foundation, and it takes help to lay that foundation. You can't do it alone. And that's where our country is based on that foundation. If we crumble, everybody up top falls.
That's good perspective.
But we've got to understand that. But what I'm saying is that that's not being taught. I understand, but it's up to us. It's up to us to be able to educate ourselves. Again, Clear Journey is about education and resources. Where you have questions, see, if you never have a question, you're never going to seek an answer. But if you got a question, then you got something to work for. You got something to be inquisitive about, to try to dissolve, to find out why it's the way it is. When you know that you got the power, on the bottom of anything lays the foundation. That's where the power is. Maybe you won't get to see it. How many people like to dig holes and lay plumbing for sewage lines? But how many people appreciate them when they're done?
I think it goes back to perspective. I mean, we just have to, that's the perspective we have to have and maybe live on, or we have to hold up our ideology against that perspective that allows us to say, okay, if we have the power, that now we need to look at this a different way. If we want to affect change, that we have to band together and do some things on the level that we're on to create these ripple effects. The thing is that you just got to get enough people to do it. And I'm not saying that we got to wait until the numbers grow, but we also have some work to do to change the mentality around, because you got people who want to see something happen. You know, the age, the world we live in, you got people who want to see something happen before they engage. And if nothing happens, they never engage, but not realizing their engagement could potentially lead to something happening. So it's that catch-22 piece that we got to figure out how to break.
Well, but here's the point. It's real simple. We got to get over the selfishness. We got to look at it like it's just that simple. We want to see the results. It might not be for you to see the results, but without the results, like I'm saying, the infrastructure, the foundation, don't nobody go down and look to see if the foundation down there, if you're up on the 100th floor. Nobody goes down there. They don't care about the foundation, because we're focused on the top instead of knowing that the bottom is where the power is. It's where the top sits on. And we look at that as being less than instead of vital.
I agree. Now, you said something I don't want to gloss over. And this is something that you don't hear often. You said it might not be for you to see results. That's key, because there are some things that what I'm hearing you say is that I have the responsibility, yea, the duty, to do some things that will allow my grandson to live a certain way, but I may not be the recipient of that.
And
It speaks to that whole humanity piece and the unselfishness piece. So are there some things that I may forfeit, for lack of a better word, or maybe not forfeit, because
well,
I'm not
no, that,
actually
you know
it,
what?
it
That's a
might be
real good. That's a
it
real
might be
good word
forfeit. It
because
might be forfeit. Yeah.
if you're willing to accept that, you can begin to get the benefits. Because here's the point: every apple you eat, a seed had to die.
Mm-hmm.
Seed had to be sown, and you have no idea where that's who sowed that seed. But all you know is you get to eat the apple. That's what we have to realize, that this model that we're living, this human life experience, it's an investment so that somebody else can eat the fruit.
I mean, it's essentially what we're living in right now. If you look at, what had to happen in the 30s and the 40s and 50s and 60s for us to even participate in life the way we do now,
Mm-hmm.
it actually speaks to that, right? There's some things that that we experience now that they only dreamed about, or maybe didn't even dream about.
Nope.
But they just knew, I want something better. So here's how I'm going to fight, and I'm going to keep fighting, and I'm going to keep fighting because I know there's better on the other side of that. They go to their grave not realizing the better.
And
In
so
terms of,
how do we have the right tonight to get in the fight?
listen, using that example and coming from that perspective, we don't have a right to sit back.
Well, but where did we get it from? How did we get it then? How did we get that right to feel that we don't have to get in the fight? Because that's you I mean, and I'm with you. I understand that that's what's out there. But until somebody challenges it, because see, everything that we want, we're accepting of it because that's what everybody else is accepting. Why? Because that's not how we got to where we are, accepting what we had.
Let me ask you a question, and I'm saying this for the sake of argument, but it could be true. Could it be that we got complacent?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is.
Could it be that we got to a space where we're like, okay, we can participate in life a certain way now, and some of us participate a lot greater than others. We got some wealth now. We got a little bit of clout now. We can make some decisions now. And then coupled with that, began to understand and realize that we could manipulate. We're talking about politics and justice being in the same conversation, that we could manipulate this to our personal favor.
Now, that right there is a point where we lost, we missed. See, because
and then let me couple with that. Hold that thought. Now I realize now I can manipulate this to my personal favor. That manipulation begins to mushroom. And now on the heels of it mushrooming, there's a whole group of people who don't believe that it can ever be right because it's been manipulated so much that now I don't need to participate. Hence,
the question is, why do you want to manipulate? Because the people that have been manipulating you. And now you feel like the manipulation is the way you play the game. That's the part of selfishness. That's what I'm talking about. We didn't think about being the manipulator when we were being manipulated until we got enough to be able to participate in being manipulated, or to be a manipulator.
Yeah.
And now we're taking on the mindset of the manipulator. So we want to be compared to the manipulator instead of just being able to be sufficient at where we are and what we have, and not to be compared. We got this thing where we're trying to be something that we're not, and that's affecting us all, because now we're the subject. It's coming full circle on us now, because now I got a right. Remember, I said this before, I got a right not to participate, and it's only because of the right that you have to participate that gives you the right not to participate.
Let me ask you a question. Is it too late?
No, never. Absolutely never. But we've got 1 and 2. We need 3 and 4.
So
We
so
need
let me I'm gonna ask this question and answer it at the same time. So what is what's the answer? Clear
well,
journey.
as it relates to politics and justice, we understand that they're important.
Hmm.
Both of them are important in their own right, but they both require us to be, as it relates to politics, we've got to get involved. We've got to be engaged. We've got to engage. And like you said, it's not enough just to go down and check all the people down. Now, granted, I'm to be the first one to admit that I do that. I've done that on many occasions,
Hmm.
but never have I not participated, because that's the first level. The very first level that we've got to get into is to say that it's not an option to participate. It's not an option. It's like you
It's
wake,
not an option. I agree. I
and
agree with that.
we can't allow it to be an option.
I agree with that. And here's what I would say too, it's from a practical standpoint, because I know we're coming down to the end of this. From a practical standpoint, right? I'm not saying ignore the folk in Washington. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying from a practical standpoint, your involvement should start where you live. So for those who are like, oh, well, we can't control what's going on in Washington anyway, so it don't matter who we put or what box we check. We can't control what they do because they're gonna do what they want to do anyway. Hence, that can be very well reinforced by what we're experiencing right now, right? However, that aside, I'm not saying ignore it, but if we set that down for a second and you go to the community that you live in, the neighborhood that you live in, and you start there. Who is we're in Maryland, right? So Maryland is split up into various counties. I'm in Baltimore County. Who is our Baltimore County executive? Who is on his staff? What community initiatives are they involved in? How can I get involved in some of those community initiatives so that my voice can be heard? What meetings should I be showing up to that govern that where they are talking about what's going to affect my entire community and there's only 10 people there when my community has like 30,000? So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's where from a grassroots perspective, I think we have to get people to shift their focus. Yeah, you may think you can't control Washington, but you can get to your county executive. He or she is not inaccessible. You can
No,
go to meetings where they show up. You can get involved in forums and community meetings and community organizations that are directly tied to those folks. And so I think from a practical standpoint, and again, I'm doing Clear Journey's job at this point, but this is what Clear Journey does: provide resources, lead you to those folk that you should be talking to, connect you with those organizations that you should be actually going to meetings. And now it's just on you as a participant in life to actually take some time out. Instead of watching your Netflix show at 8 o'clock, go to that meeting at 8 o'clock and
here,
start meeting people and having conversations and talking. And let's create this ripple effect that puts pressure on our county folk, that puts pressure on our state folk, that puts pressure on our national folk.
look, you're absolutely right. And the overwhelming thing that we want to share here is that engagement brings you benefit too. Okay.
It does.
It brings
It
you
does.
benefit too. So granted, the motivation is on a bigger scale, in the sense, if it's no more than the school board, it's the doggone community, your community association.
Mhm.
Getting engagement allows you connection with other resources that now you have access to. Now, see, here's the point where people don't realize where corruption comes in. It's those access that you get. Now, how you use them is up to you,
Mhm.
but it's the access that you get when you start engaging that gives you the opportunities that we're talking about, that you can begin to live your best life.
Yeah.
See, this thing all comes back to you if you get engaged.
Yeah.
but you gotta engage. The sooner you get, Barack Obama started as a community advocate.
Mm-hmm.
He just was a community person that was all about doing stuff for the community. Got connections, started to build connection. Where's this at? Grassroots is where? It's on the ground. It's at the foundation. It's where we build the foundation for what we're trying to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with engagement. Get involved. That's what politics is at the essence of it. It's about your ability to get involved and not allow people to navigate their lives through you instead of you controlling how politicians govern you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it is. You elect people to govern you.
Yeah.
And then we're going to complain about how they govern and you didn't even elect them.
And I think that's why switching the focus is so important. I was reading this basic definition of politics, and it's from a Greek word that means affairs of the cities, right? A set of activities that are associated with making decisions in groups and other forms of power-related relations among individuals, such as distribution of resources or status. So if we take that and we look and we take it away from Washington for a second, I'm not saying they don't matter, but if you take it away from Washington for a second and you take that and you look at the groups that are around you, it could be your neighborhood again. It could be your church group. It could be your women's group. It could be your men's group.
The school.
Whatever these groups are, your sorority group, whatever it is, fraternity group, and then begin to look inward as to how we can use that, leverage that group to do things within that group that affect the next ring. So the next ring around your fraternity might be your school system. Or for some people, the next ring around your community organization or your church group might be your community organization. So if we're looking at it from, okay, how can I affect just the next ripple? And then the next ripple is like, how can I affect the ripple after me? We completely change our mindset around how this thing works. At some point, if we continue to be consistent with that, the ripples go where they need to go. So I think that at least for me, I'm talking to myself now at this point. I'm like, okay, that's what I need to be doing. Like, what are the community groups in my community where the next ripple would be the county?
And don't overlook the influence that you gain in this participation. The influence, the things that you will begin to involve yourself with, the connection, and you will begin to see things like you've never seen before. Opportunities will occur as a result of these opportunities, of this engagement that you will have.
Yep. That's it. And shout out to my guy Nick. I will get you that indeed. Shout out to my guy Nick, who's in is he in the comments or is he in? He hit me up though, my guy Nick. Shout out to, and please forgive me if I messed this up, Suhalia says, if you have kids, getting involved in the school system or directly with the schools is the easiest way to get involved in the community. I love it. And that's very true.
Thank you. That's
Your
exactly.
School, thank you for that. I love it. Your school organization, the PTA, the school board folks, have conversations with them, and that's what we really gotta get people. We just gotta change that focus. Listen, just look around you, because we're talking about humanity. Remember, we're tying this all into something. If you missed the beginning, all of this is under the umbrella of humanity, which is one of the 8 areas that Clear Journey deals with. If we're looking at this from a humanity standpoint, now we said should politics and justice be in the same conversation? What if we take them out of the conversation all completely and put in the word humanity. Now the question becomes, what is it that you feel like is your responsibility to humanity? And then once you realize what your purpose is and your responsibility is to humanity, what now do you need to do? Do you need to say? Where do you need to be? Who do you need to meet that now aligns with what you feel like you need to contribute to humanity? That's a very different conversation than, oh, we need to fix politics, because now your
Yep.
focus changes.
Yep. And that's again, if you if you get here a little late, you didn't hear the humanity part, but that is the perspective that we want to address
Right.
as it pertains to situations where we all have something in common. Politics, we have in common, if only we get involved. Justice, we have this, it's that way that we are governed and ruled and being able to be able to have order in this governance. That's for all of us, not just a few. Okay. Now, take away all of the other things that people have abused them, but just stay focused on the fact of what the intent is.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can begin to see things a whole lot differently. And I tell you, the things that we will begin to gain as it relates to this shift in our perspective, man, the sky's the limits.
Sky's the limit. Let me give you a very real world example before we close out. Real world example. I have had the privilege of hanging out with a group of individuals called the Baltimore County Leaders and Citizens. Now, what this community organization does is they are heavily involved in schools. They are heavily involved in county governance. So they know people. It was formed by former educators and school administrators. So they have a heart for the schools. They have a heart for the kids, but they are also very well connected to county legislature. In me hanging out with them, it gave me a better understanding of what's happening in Baltimore County. Number one. Number two, it also caused me now to care. I'll be honest. There were times where I didn't, ignorance causes you to not care. So I didn't really know everything that was going on. So I just dealt with what's happening in these four walls because that's all I felt like I could handle. But the more I hung out with them, the more events that I went to, the more meetings that I went to, I got to meet folk that are county executives. I got to meet people who were at the time running for school board. I got to talk to these individuals and have conversations, and they see I'm a real person. I see they're a real person, and it changes your perspective about what happens boots on the ground. Because now you're like, if I can be involved in something that affects the people that live around me, we all become a better unit. And if everybody else is doing that, now you have these pockets of better units that all come together to create a bigger unit that now has enough power to affect change in the next ripple.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the state.
This is the adjustment that we want to present. Mm-hmm. It's an option. Okay. Yeah. And for anyone who is listening to this, is that a different perspective will change your outcomes in life.
Agreed.
It will change it. Agreed. We talk about a clear journey. We talk about the attitude will determine your outcome. That all changes with the perspective that we begin to look at things. So that's what this is tonight. Should politics and justice be in the same conversation? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's because they're basically stand alone by themselves. We need them both. And if you're subject to the order of our country, then you should be held accountable. And it doesn't exempt you from, if you are a politician, you still should be held accountable. We should all be held accountable to the same laws, the same order, regardless as to our position. There you go.
There
That
it
was a
is.
nutshell. We took us an hour and 2 minutes, 5 minutes to get there, but there you go.
Yeah, we went the scenic route, but
Yeah.
we had to go the scenic route, because here's the thing, as it relates to current events, and we didn't say any names, but we know what's going on. We know the marriage between politics and justice right now, and everybody has their opinion on how this thing is going to play out. Even though right in front of our eyes it looks one way, but we have a feeling it's going to go the other direction.
But here's the kicker. It really doesn't matter which way it goes.
And that's what I was about to say.
Which way it goes.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. Now, it will be unfortunate if what we feel like always happens does happen. However, again, our focus needs to be on the things where we can affect change. And
Absolutely.
if we begin to affect change and we work on the ripple that we're in a way that it affects the next one, at some point we get to where we need to be, especially if our focus is, and here's the wrap up, our focus is humanity. If our focus is humanity and what we aim to leave and the legacy we aim to create, it will cause us to buckle down and focus where we need to focus.
Here's my last word here. We need to be able to say never again. Be willing to put the work in, because we never again want to say that we didn't participate when we had the opportunity. Never again. So we want to move forward. Never. The past is behind us, but we should be able to say never again. That being said, Oliver, let the people know where they can find you.
Listen, if you are a social media person, you can find me. Just look up my name. It's on the screen, Oliver Marcel, or you can do the handle, which is at Denali, DENOLI LLC. Denali LLC is the handle on all social media. My email is simply oliver@denali.org. I would love to have a conversation with you. So passionate about relationship building, both personally and professionally. Author of the book, Overcoming the Man Laws. And so let's have a conversation. Come connect with me.
That's great. And also, he's a participant. He's a part of Clear Journey. Also, he is a strategic partner. So if it relates to relationships, he's your man. Also, as it relates to finding out more about Clear Journey, go over to clearjourney.org. We have underneath the Balanced Life tab all of the areas of life that we're talking about, and it pertains to all of the things that the areas of life that if there's an issue that you're dealing with, there's something over there that can help you navigate through it. And that's what we do at Clear Journey. We give you resources and education in things to help you navigate this thing called life a little bit more successfully. So if you want to reach out to me, you can get me at info@clearjourney.org, or you could catch me on my over at Clear Journey. You can leave me a message over there. I'm also the author of Love Made Simple, the guide to inner peace, contentment, and success. You can go look me up at juanleetheauthor.com and find the book. And any of these things that you look in and you find and you purchase will do nothing more than help Clear Journey in its mission to help those that are in need of education and resources. So, Oliver, we've had another, I think, a great evening of conversation. I appreciate you. And we're going to do it again next week. It might be look a little different next week, but I think I'm thinking about maybe running a solo.
Okay.
So we're gonna talk. We're probably gonna talk more Clear Journey, and what it is that if you want to be a participant, we're looking for volunteers. We're looking for people. And if you have a business or you want to get engaged or be a part of Clear Journey, info@clearjourney.org. Let me know. We can talk. We look forward to engaging as many people as we want in this journey to help, just unite us together to be better people all over the world. All righty. Until next time, we'll see you. We can't change life, but we sure can help you navigate it. Until next time, see you.
Later.